right, welcome to another episode of the Legacy Blueprint. I'm excited today. Our guest today, he calls himself an authority blogger. He says he's re-engineered his life. He's obviously been through a lot of seasons of change and success and pitfalls and roadblocks. We're going to uncover a lot of those things today, and we're going to talk about what has made Joe DiSanto, Joe DiSanto. So, Joe, welcome to the show. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the intro. I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for being on, man. I mean, we had a little bit of a catch-up session here before the recording, and it's exciting, man. I mean, I talk to people all the time, that have made transitions between industries and stuff like that, but you got a really interesting story. Tell us about your background in the production TV business before you kind of got to this place, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I know a lot of the shows about real estate and stuff, and I've done real estate along the way, but my primary business up until now really was the advertising and entertainment business. And I actually went to school, believe it or not, for I got a degree in photography and fine arts, and I was just always interested in that, and that was something, I dabbled in some other subjects, but I really gravitated towards that, even though, I could even see that the job prospects were probably not that good, but I was like, they say do what you love. So
absolutely.
But, in addition to that, and it was funny, I was listening to your last episode, and your guest there, Matt, he was saying how his family didn't have any businesses. They just worked a lot, and, you didn't get taught business and real estate and things like that. And, my family, my parents got divorced, and, I learned a lot of lessons after that. But my dad did own a plumbing and heating business. And I really do think that was very meaningful in that it just showed me that you could have a business, that was a attainable thing. It was not that big of a deal. You just needed to accept the fact that was something you could do. And so I always had this idea, I want to own a business. I know that's a good thing. And I want it to be involved, have something to do with art and what I like. And long story short, that translated into a post-production business, which is, if you think about Photoshop and digital imaging or whatever, so it's you take photos and then you can digitize them and do different things with them. We'll take that and you apply it to film and video. So it's like Photoshop in motion, or whatever, I guess you could call it that. And my business was editing, visual effects, color correction, sound design, audio engineering, mastering. And so someone would come to us and say, we want to make this commercial or TV show or movie or music video. And often we would even do the production, take it all the way through post-production, and then deliver them. Well, when I started, we would deliver them a tape. Now, you don't deliver a tape, you deliver a file. But so, I went to New York to kind of get into that. And then that led me to Los Angeles. And I found, it took a while to get that business going. We started, I had a goal of starting a business by the time I was 30. And we opened the doors 2 months after my 30th birthday. So we were close. And, we entered the unknown. It was pretty scary and risky, actually. It worked out, but just a lot of hours and a lot of dedication. And you got to build your reputation up. And we worked at it, me and my partners, and it turned out to be successful. And it's still in existence. Therapy Studios is still going strong. It occupies the building that we collectively own, my partners and I, because like your previous guest was saying, he was talking a lot about taking on different business ventures and sort of, related to what you're doing. I call that piggybacking. Mm-hmm. Another term for that is backwards integration. But it's whatever you're spending money on, you should try to figure out how to own a piece of that and, reap the profits of the money that you're dishing out. 100%. And real estate is no different. So yeah, we were we were 3 years into our space when we started. Luckily it was going good. We needed more space. And we were looking at renovating someone else's building, and doing a 5-year lease. And I'm like, wait a second. Mm-hmm. We're going to spend $1 million to renovate this person's building? That doesn't make any sense. We need to buy the building. So we did. It was tough, but we bought our first building. We were in there for 8 years, and then we traded up again, sold that, made some money, reinvested half the profits, bought another beautiful building. And I was always interested in real estate. So like I took that on as part of my, role as a partner, and I managed that was real commercial development. And so I've done real estate kind of like 4 ways, I feel like now. And I consider those development projects largely because even when it's your own building, when you go into a commercial purchase and you have an idea of what you want to do, you have to figure out if that plan is viable, right? So you have to spend some money, and you have to put some money on the table that's just plain at risk.
Absolutely.
You might not get it back. It might not work out, but you put that money into developing the idea. And so even though it was our own building, I call it commercial development. And yeah, it was like full change of use, full architecture, like, taking a building from basically a warehouse piece of crap to a beautiful creative office space in Los Angeles, and dealing with, all sorts of Department of Transportation, all these things that I just kind of learned on the fly. But I also learned that when you find like a gem and you put the work in and you take the big risk, well, that's where you get a lot of the big reward in real estate.
I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, 100%. I think that a lot of times people don't realize the amount of risk that goes into it, but it's calculated risk, it's educated risk, it's deciding there's an end use. I mean, we're doing a development site right now. It's a $20 million site, but people don't realize we're going to have $200,000 in just due diligence, just engineering and drawings and surveys and design work. And I think that people don't realize sometimes that, yes, there's a huge upside to that. People have retired and built legacy and built lives off of big commercial real estate. But there's also a semblance of you have to have the cash up front to get in the game and to take the risk. And, that's always your cash. So
yeah, man,
almost always your cash.
It's intense. Honestly, I feel like it took a couple years off my life, both times. But it was, it's a source of great pride, those 2 buildings. Actually, on my website, what I've been trying to do over time, because I'm learning it takes a while to like put a lot of good information on a website.
It's the hardest thing.
It's very time consuming, especially when you're trying to like work less, and live the freer lifestyle.
Totally.
But I've been trying to like slowly describe all of my real estate transactions and renovations and development projects, which I've done about 16 total real estate transactions, including my own residences, which I consider investments, which is kind of a contested topic. And I try to describe exactly what happened, and I give financial details for everything so that people who really want to see, well, what's it like to go do a commercial deal, they can go read my thing and get a pretty good understanding of what you have to go through and look at the finances. Actually, I should say with the commercial deals, because I had partners, I don't put very detailed finances, but on all the residential, which is my own stuff, I put all renovation costs, all, down payment costs, all, I call it no gimmies accounting. I do absolutely no gimmies accounting, for better or for worse, even if it's embarrassing in some cases because it doesn't work out the way you want. So people can go to my site and really get a good sense of what transacting in real estate is going to be like and what you truly can expect. But I was recounting our first commercial project the other day, and I literally almost had like PTSD sweats as I was like remembering the trauma of getting that thing across the finish line. And I'll give you a quick anecdote of my first deal. If just to encapsulate it quickly, we closed it in March 2008, and Lehman Brothers did our loan. So nice. That's just a metaphor for like, how challenging it was. But in the end, we got through the other side and we made really good money with it. And the next building we did is even more beautiful. It's my pride and joy.
Well, let me backtrack a second. So first of all, you're saying you single-handedly put Lehman Brothers out of business. Is that what you're saying? You were the last loan they wrote before?
Yeah. The last loan they did. They were like, "This is it." I think we could have been the last loan, and I said this in my little story that it was funding day. Everything, it was tough to get there, and then the money never came through. It just didn't show up, and like people were like, "Well, I've never seen this happen before." It took, lawyers got out, the whole thing. It took 3 days for the money to show up to escrow from our lender. And we're just like,
Oh man.
Wow, that's just weird. Isn't that weird? I
Yeah.
mean, I know things are getting dicey, but I've never seen that. Cut to
And
like 4 months later, they're BK, and I'm like, I think we were the last Lehman Brothers loan. They're probably sitting there going, should we ruin these people's lives or not? And they're
we got
like,
to go
let's
sell
just
some
give them
bad
the money.
paper. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go sell some bad
we got.
paper. So let me backtrack a second, because one of the things you said was really interesting, and I want to ask you your opinion on this. So, I wrote a book. My first book was all about rehabbing houses. We gave case studies, dollar for dollar testimonials, exactly what happened, how much we paid, how we got the house, what we paid for it, what the rehab costs were, all the expenses, and then the profit margins. You did a similar thing on your website. You're showing people the details of the deals. There's so much free education out there. There's so much paid education out there on real estate investing. But yet I still talk to people every single week that say, I've been learning, I've been reading, I've been growing, I've been watching Joe's podcast, I've been watching Joe's blog about how to do this stuff. And then I say to them, well, that's great. How many deals have you done? 0, right?
Right.
What do you think makes the differentiator between guys like you and I that have gone out there, taken the risk and gotten the reward, versus the people who just kind of sit on the sidelines and watch, the bystanders?
Right.
What do you think is that differentiating factor?
Well, let me preface my response by saying I jokingly say about myself, I sort of toe the line between a realist and a cynic, so for whatever that's worth. But
All right.
I really do think that by and large, there's certain kinds of people out there. I think it's genetic, whatever. I think some people's minds work a certain way and some people's minds work a certain way. And there are people that are going to be out there that want to do things and just will never do it, and there are going to be people out there that want to do things and just will do it. And then there's going to be a middle slice where they can cross over, but the circumstances just have to be right, or something has to happen to spark them. And actually, your last guest, Matt, in a way, that was a perfect story. He had it in him. He just needed the right motivation. So I do think it's a bit of genetics in a way, but I think what people need to do is they really need to look at themselves and be honest and ask themselves, who am I? Like, am I the person that's never going to do this? Because I probably know that might be me, and maybe I should just stop giving myself the grief. Or if you're the person who's going to do it, you've probably already tried and you're trying it right now. And I think, if you really look at yourself and are honest and like you have it in you, when you say to yourself, listen, just stop now if you're going to do it, or if you're going to do it, just get to it, just, and don't give yourself the grief anymore of being on the fence. I think if you really take the moment and do that, maybe it has to be a spark, like your girlfriend has to leave you, whatever. Look for those signs too. But at some point you just have to commit, I guess, in your head, and then you have to set the goal of like, all right, what do I want to accomplish? And usually, if you haven't accomplished much and you don't have much, you got to give yourself small, accomplishable steps, because if you just think too big, you're going to just, bum yourself out and sort of lose motivation. So you pick one, step that's not too far away, and you really focus on getting to that step. It's like the ramps, when you walk into a building, they have those little plateaus. It's like, get to that first plateau, get a success, and then go bigger. You always end up going bigger, because once you get into it, if you're that kind of person and you like it, you want to go bigger. You're like, well, what am I going to do next?
It becomes
that was
addictive.
great.
The success becomes
very addictive. Yeah.
What you're saying reminds me of a passage in Mark Manson wrote this book, A Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You probably read it. And he talks about the do something principle, right? So to relate that to what you just said, like, you're the not doer, then, maybe go find a different hobby, right?
Right.
You're the doer, you've probably already done it. You don't need motivation. But if you're in that gap in between, that, that pie slice in between, it's like, I don't know, I can go this way or I can go that way. Like the do something principle, he basically says, you don't need motivation to do something. When you do something, it creates momentum and motivation. So it's the opposite. Go out there, get on that first level of the ramp, get up to that first step. And when you do, all of a sudden it'll create this thing where you look back and you're like, well, that wasn't so bad. Let me do the next step. Let me do the next step. So I love what you're saying there. I think it relates a lot to that book.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I mean, I guess I'm kind of hard on myself, and I'm hard on others that like ask me for help, which is probably why I'm not going to be like the most successful guru in the world. Because I'm just like, stop bitching and whining, dude. Just go do it. You know what I mean? Either you get on the bus or get off the bus, but don't spend this time like at the stairs. You know what I mean? And I really like push people to be like, hold the mirror up to yourself. I would say this to my employees all the time. Like, you don't need to know. Like, I will tell you what you did wrong and how we can improve, but you're smart enough. All you got to do is just hold the mirror up. I would jokingly say, look in the mirror and, you know, inside what needs to be done to like move this in the positive direction. You know, so you don't need me to tell you, but I'll help you, you know, and if you want some tips, I will, but I know that you can make that decision for yourself, commit and go, you know, so
that's
hold
a great
yourself
segue.
Accountable.
Because on your site, on playlouder.com rather, which we'll have in the show notes, you guys can click on that. You talk about how business owners can increase their net worth and plan for a better future. Can you give us some of the just highlight steps of, let's start with, net worth, right? What are some of the things that a business owner can do to increase their net worth?
Yeah. Well, yeah, part of what I'm kind of, I've in finding my sweet spot, I guess, and it just kind of came out naturally, is like, I'm not as much helping people figure out how to build a net worth, but like I'm working with people that are successful people, but they work a lot of hours and they're not particularly like in love with doing their finances. And they're essentially leaving a lot of money on the table, number one, just, by not organizing their life right. And they're not taking like the whole investment thing seriously. It's like they've created a business, they're making some money, they're not keeping as much, and then they're not putting that money to work well enough. And, I kind of say to people a lot, like, you got to be doing, if you want to get to what I call the promised land, whatever that is for you sooner, it's like, you got to be doing multiple things at the same time. You can't just be doing one thing. You got to have, multiple irons in the fire. So I was always like, all right, I'm going to do this business, but we're spending this much money on rent every month. We got to own a building. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to do the extra work to figure that out. But same goes for your house, which a lot of millennials today sort of debate whether owning a house is a worthwhile venture, which to me is a silly debate. But I'm like, you're spending rent every month. You got to piggyback that and get that into an investment. So you got to figure that out. Stock, what you're going to invest in obviously kind of is a personal choice, I guess, but I like real estate. It's done really well for me. Most of my money's in real estate for a variety of reasons. And then, with our business, for example, I was like, okay, we've invested a lot of money in all these services and maybe not always operating at top capacity. So what else could we do to utilize the investments we've made that might potentially create a new source of revenue for us? We always got to be thinking about like, what's a way we can piggyback on what we've already done to create a new source of revenue? Because maybe that new source of revenue will just be extra money on top. Hopefully it will be, but it also might be the things that save us if something we're currently doing, I don't know, like dissipates over time, or we lose a big client or whatever. So me and my partners were always thinking that, like, what else could we be doing? So we were always doing these kind of extra projects. Like, we decided to produce our own documentary at our own cost because, one, we wanted to get into producing content, but two, we wanted to broaden like our client base. Well, cut to 8 years later, we co-produced a show for HBO. Like, if we didn't decide to invest the extra time and the extra money into developing that avenue, that just wouldn't have happened,
Yeah.
Another thing we tried to do was build a website, a comedy website that, was very video oriented, because our whole company was making videos all day. And we had a lot of interns, that wanted projects. And I was like, wow, these interns are hungry. Like, let's create something that, we can give them to do. That's not super consequential. So we created a website called Worldwide Interweb. Now, that website didn't particularly turn out to be like a financial success, but we learned a ton about like the online media space that we put to work in like our more lucrative kind of business in advertising.
Yeah.
And we were able to translate a lot of that experience and a lot of that knowledge into new clients because we were just better educated. And then I actually personally learned a lot about the whole blogosphere and online world. And that gave me confidence to say, hey, if I ever want to change things up, I think I could go pursue what you call me as an authority blogger kind of avenue. So it's like, you just got to keep upping the ante, I think. And I tell that to my clients all the time, like, what are you doing? What else could we be doing? Like, what other avenues can we be tackling that is not that much work and takes advantage of what you already have, what you already have invested in and, already have going.
I love that, man.
So that builds, it takes building wealth, obviously takes 20, 30 years. And so it's not like, all right, we started that, like, great, we can, retire next year. No, it's just layering, and layering,
I think the thing you're pointing out, which is really most interesting, is you don't hear about these things so business owners are creators. Business owners are constantly trying to figure out what's the next step, what's the next level, but you don't hear about the times when they failed. And like most recently, I can think about in our media company, we run a digital media ad agency that does lead generation. And at some point earlier on in the year, everyone's like e-com. So we're like, okay, cool. We're going to take, 10 grand invested in e-com, segment of our business. And we're going to sell products through this store and everything else. And here we are months later, and like the store's not even running yet. It's not our focus. It's not our piece. And people just don't, you don't hear about that a lot, with business owners. I tried something, it didn't work. I move on, whatever. I'm not in that space anyway. Let me focus on what we're great at. I'm going to continue to drive sales on this side. But is there and I call that I call that my favorite failures, right? Things that have failed, but I learned from them. I realized it's not my space. I tested it out. Do you have any favorite failures through the years? Because you got 20 some years of business ownership experience and you've been doing this for a long time. Any of those kind of like hit you when you think about that?
Well, the one is the website, Worldwide Internet, which it's still alive. We actually ended up kind of partnered with another guy who knows more about online advertising, revenue and arbitrage and things, and it's doing better. But we built this site, and like we just kind of came in it from a creator content point of view, and we put some money to it, and we built it up. Like we partnered with a friend of ours who had been in the space. He had a lot of contacts for syndication of content and this, that, and the other. And we built it up in like a couple of years to about 500,000 unique visitors a month, which is quite a bit. I was like, wow, that seems like a lot. I think that we should be able to translate that into some money. And I'm like, I'm a smart person. I know I can turn this into money. But I spent like 2 years and I was just like, I cannot figure out how to turn this into money for some reason. I just don't know enough about this landscape to do it. And part of it was like, I feel like we chose the wrong thing. Like comedy website is a very difficult thing to monetize because the audience is not, in product buying mode. They're not seeking product. They're seeking distraction from their job. We're basically proliferating like lack of productivity around the nation with this website is what we're doing. But, I just kept digging and and I learned a ton. And it was funny because like some months we'd make like $5,000 in revenue on this website. And I'd be so excited about that $5,000. But like over here, our other business is doing 400,000 in a month. And I'm like, why am I spending my time on this damn website?
You got to be able to maneuver, right? Like I that's another thing. I see people in stagnation, especially during COVID. It's very interesting. Like I think when COVID happened, you had to be nimble or you got swallowed up. And I feel terrible for the businesses that lost. And there's certain businesses that just can't survive, like restaurants and stuff like that. Yeah. You can't when the business is shut down for 3 months. But I think there's also certain businesses that they didn't pivot fast enough. They didn't think about, hey, we got to take on this new thing. Like, our entire office went virtual in 24 hours,
That's amazing.
And it's amazing. And I'm not saying it to brag. I'm saying that it's possible. And there's so many that fought it and, what am I going to do next? And how am I going to figure it out? And I'm shuttering the doors,
Yeah.
And I think that if you're not nimble and flexible and thinking, I'm going to test something out. It doesn't work. Let's move on to something else. It takes a lot of guts to admit that you kind of failed, whatever that's like, with a website, I look at it and I go, okay, it's not making money. This one is. Yeah. It's tough, right?
It's tough to be
fail.
It really is, especially when you spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
You're just like, because I don't know, I guess I have a lot of pride in my ability to get things figured out. And I was just like, man, this just seems really shouldn't be this hard, but it is, but it
Yeah.
was, and you just said, but so I always just at the end of the day say, well, at some point you got to cut your losses, and figure out either end it, or in our case, we found someone else to take it over and we're sharing in the revenue, and that's good. But you also just have to extract the data, extract the lessons, extract the education, and say, all right, what can I apply this to?
Exactly.
Because any good effort, of learning and attempting to make a business and make money is always going to have really good lessons associated with it. It just will.
Yeah.
So you just got to do that. But it is kind of hard. You got to take it on the chin a little bit. But I'm not complaining. It's like we had the wherewithal and ability, and we've had a lot of successes to be able to try those things and fail. So that's good. What's even harder is if you fail your first time out, getting back up and giving it another go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta take the hits and learn the lessons. And to your point about COVID, yeah, it's like, I really think that if you're subscribing to the idea that you do have to constantly be doing multiple things and diversifying yourself and broadening your business out beyond what you originally thought it was, that's the kind of thing that helps you in a scenario like COVID, where you're like, wow, thank God I got that other thing going, because that particular line of revenue actually isn't affected by this so much, where this line of revenue is, so you have them. It might just be the thing that gives you the runway, or, the room to get through a tough scenario. So I do think
things I love. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say diversification, in life and in business is, I think, very important.
I think one of the things I love about, I'm just sitting here kind of reflecting on it while you're speaking. One of the things I love about diversification or trying multiple things, like I was just telling my 10-year-old this morning, the best investment you can make is in people, right? Like anyone who's been majorly successful has awesome people around them. They're great team members, A-plus players. And when you diversify, it forces you to go find great people, because you can't be in 10 places at once. So now all of a sudden I'm going to try a different thing. Okay, let me put some good people in that place. All right, let me try this thing. What's it going to take? Let me find the people that are going to make this thing go forward. And then all of a sudden you wake up, and that's how you have 7, 8, 10 streams of income, because you've found great people to sit in those seats, make them part of your culture. And now all of a sudden you have an ancillary piece of business that's making money, hopefully. But then you got to not be afraid to cut them out when they're not making money, right?
Yeah. That is true. You do have to, cut your losses when necessary. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like one thing, I think you need to think about is like, you're only one person, right? You can only do so much, in a week or whatever. You can only learn so much. And the way you grow is to bring people with different kinds of expertise into your life, either in your business or in your networking or in your diversification of your business. And they all have their expertise, and you bring all those people into your world, and you're learning from them like in a much faster way than if you're going out and just trying to like read about it and learn about it from scratch. You know what I mean? Like these people have invested their life in being an expert in this field, and they just give you, the most critical bullet points, And honestly, I guess in a way, like that's the conclusion I've come to a little bit with like courses and things, because I've been on my own journey to learn about the websites and SEO and all the things that, are going to, potentially make this business venture more successful. And I realized there's so much information out there. It's just like, it's dizzying. You're just like, I don't even know like who to listen to. So at some point I was like, what you end up doing is at some point you pick your guru for the topic. You just forget about everybody else for a while. And you watch, you learn, you execute, based on their instruction. And that's the value of like courses and things out there. It's like, you're essentially just buying someone's very distilled expertise, and you're just getting to it, 100%. But it can be a little, if you're like new to it, you're like, am I getting ripped off? Am I paying too much? You can get a little paralysis about it. But like once you commit and kind of get into it, I mean, you don't want to overdo it, because you could just buy I think in some ways the people who are never going to do anything, what them doing something is them buying the course. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. They're like, I bought the course. I'm improving my life. You're
and you know
like,
what, Joe? That's systemic in the industry, right? I listened to an interview over the weekend, and it was a guy who sold $13 million in courses, and he flat out said, and this is the truth, I think Tony Robbins said the same thing, 70% of people that buy a course never open it.
Yeah.
Right. So then the 30% that are left, there's only like 6 to 7% that actually do the work and finish. And here's the thing, when you're in that atmosphere, right? Everyone complains about fake gurus and people that don't know what they're doing, teaching products. Like, it's pretty simple to realize if there's testimonials there and they're legit, the person's got a background in doing it. They put their heart and soul into recording the trainings and everything. The reason that most gurus look bad is because the people that buy their shit never do the work.
Yeah.
You know, if you implemented what they taught and you have a legit person on your hands, you're going to be successful. But a lot of people are too lazy, and I've done it. I mean, I buy courses all the time just because I'm like, I'll put that little bit of knowledge in my back pocket. I'll log in when I need it. You know what I mean? But if you're going to complain about a course and you're not going to do the work, you got to decide if you're looking in the mirror or you're looking at the guy that you think stole the money from you.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the difference in personality, whatever. I think it's a mix of everything's nature and nurture, I think, but I really do think for many people, the self-help is the act of buying the course, and that's where it ends.
That's the precipice.
And it's not always people's fault. I mean, life is demanding, especially if you have kids, and it's like you don't always have tremendous amount of time, and you realize, shit, if I'm going to learn this whole new thing, I'm going to have to do this at night, like after 8 o'clock.
I'm going to have to put in the work. Like, oh my God,
Yeah. I mean, that's why, honestly, young people, I really do say, I mean, I say some goofy stuff. Well, people think it's goofy, but I'm like, don't have kids till you're 40, man, because they're going to take up a ton of your time, and it's going to be time taken away from your success. It's just the truth. Do people succeed greatly with lots of kids at a young age? Yes, but I think it makes it far more challenging, and it just puts a lot of other obstacles. Now, people think I'm kind of weird for saying that stuff sometimes. They get like a little bit like, what do you have, a public kids or whatever? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just honest. Like, they take up a lot of time and money. So like, maybe do that when you're more successful, like
inclined,
put the time in when you're in your 20s, especially you have the energy then,
We're
I'm like super realist like that. What's that?
We're all living older anyway, so it's okay. It's okay. You can have a little bit older.
I'm a mega realist in that way. Like, I look at the numbers. I always kind of say to myself, I'm a do the math guy. Like, I'll do the math on anything, and you can do the math on anything, and it's like, if the math says I will have more time to devote to success in my 20s, if I do this, and this, well, I'm like, all right, well, the math said I should do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, Joe, I want to be respectful of your time. We're running on 40 minutes here, and that was a great interview. I feel like we could probably do this for another hour, so I got to cut it at some point here. But
no problem. I'm a meanderer, so
I think we did good. Is there anything? So Play Louder is the site. You guys can check out Joe's stuff. There's obviously a ton of knowledge in there. Joe's got a great background that can help you teach where you want to go. Joe, anything else you want to plug, or how can people reach you?
Yeah. Well, my site's the best place. I mean, and I really am putting a lot of energy and effort into putting free, valuable information there, information that's been key for me. One of the things I like to say that you really need to think about and focus on life is 3 things. You need to be financially prudent, business-minded, and financially focused. Okay. And all those 3 topics are kind of covered in my site. The financially prudent is about budgeting, tracking your money, knowing where you're at all the time, taking it seriously, and stop pretending that you can do it by your gut, because you can't. Business minded is start a business if you can, but if you're not starting a business, think of yourself as a business. Be the best. Like, when I was an employee, I was like the product with one client in my mind, and I needed to make sure they wanted to keep paying me more, and keep hiring me for my services. So I always thought like a business, even if I didn't, even before I had one. And then, investment focused is like, how are you going to make your money that you're making grow, whether it be real estate, that's my choice by and large, or stocks or whatever. all those topics are covered in a variety of degrees on my site. And I do have one new paid course that's come out about incorporating yourself. So if you are a freelancer, independent contractor, or doing a business function part-time, you need to incorporate yourself to get the most tax efficiency and legal liability protection, and make the most of the business venture. So that's something actually that's pretty in-depth and you can purchase. But there's a free portion of that as well. So
awesome.
Check me out there. Otherwise, I'm most active on LinkedIn, I guess. That's my biggest social media kind of place.
Cool. There you go. You guys can check it out. You can search out Play Louder. Joe DiSanto. Thanks for joining us today, Joe. It was a great interview, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.